You know that person, right? The one who can ace every single grammar test in a foreign language, but can't actually order a coffee to save their life? It's a classic problem. Well, back in the 1970s, educators noticed this was happening all the time, and it sparked a total revolution in how we teach languages. That revolution is called Communicative Language Teaching, or CLT.
So to really get why this was such a big deal, we've got to rewind a bit and look at the core problem that teachers were up against.
And this slide just nails it. On one side, you've got students who, on paper, were fantastic. They could write these perfect sentences, no grammar mistakes. But the moment they stepped outside the classroom, all that knowledge just didn't translate. They knew all the rules of the game, but they couldn't actually play.
So it became super clear that something major was missing. The goal couldn't just be linguistic competence, knowing grammar and vocab. The real prize was this idea of communicative competence. It's all about being able to use the language to do things. How do you invite someone to a party? How do you politely say no? That was the skill that was totally absent.
This new focus on communicative competence basically turned everything on its head. The main objective of teaching a language changed completely. It was all about real, effective communication.
And this is the big switch, right? The focus moved from simply knowing a language like it's a subject in a textbook to actually using it like a tool. The whole point was to get students to a place where they could communicate, not just to be understood, but to do it in a way that's appropriate for whatever situation they're in.
Okay, so how do you even teach that? Well, it boils down to these four things. Students have to know the words and grammar, sure, but they also need to know what those words mean, what social job they're doing, and, this is the key, how to pick the best way to say something in a specific moment. Think about it. Just for making a suggestion, you could say, let's go, or shall we go, or why don't we go? Knowing which one fits best, that's communicative competence.
So if the end goal is real communication, how do we know if a classroom activity is actually getting us there? Well, any truly communicative task has three key features that make it different from just a boring old drill.
The formula is actually pretty simple. First, there has to be an information gap. I know something you don't, which gives us a real reason to talk. Second, there's choice. The student isn't a robot just reading a script. They get to decide what they want to say and how they want to say it. And third, feedback. The other person's response tells you if your message actually landed. If you've got all three of those, then congratulations, you've got genuine communication. Now, as you can imagine, an approach like this doesn't just change the lesson plan. It totally flips the script on who does what in the classroom. Let's look at how things changed for both teachers and students.
And this is a huge shift from the old way of doing things. The teacher stops being the sage on the stage who just lectures. Instead, they become a facilitator. Their job is to set up situations that get students talking. And the students? They're not just passive listeners anymore. They're active collaborators, working together, figuring things out, and getting way more time to actually practice speaking.
All right, so this entire approach is built on a really clear foundation. Let's dig into the guiding principles that shape every single CLT lesson.
There are basically four main pillars holding this all up, and we're going to break them down one by one. But the gist is, language is for talking, use real stuff, don't sweat the mistakes, and actually speak the language you're trying to learn in the classroom.
First up, language is a tool. That's it. It's not just some abstract subject you study to pass a test. Every single activity needs to have a real point, a real communicative purpose. You're not just practicing grammar for the sake of it. You're using grammar to do something, like plan a clip or give your opinion.
Next up, you've got to keep it real. Authenticity is everything. This means ditching those perfect, clean, and totally fake textbook dialogues. Instead, think about giving students a real train schedule. It's kind of messy, it's got weird abbreviations, it's exactly what they would face out there in the real world. It exposes them to the natural, messy language they'll actually hear.
And the way we handle mistakes, that's another big change. In CLT, errors are just seen as a normal, natural part of learning. The main goal, especially when you're just trying to get your ideas out, is to keep the conversation flowing. A teacher isn't going to interrupt you mid-sentence to correct a little mistake. They'll probably make a note of it for later, because stopping you just kills the momentum.
And finally, the target language becomes the language of the classroom. The teacher gives instructions in it, students ask questions in it, group work happens in it. The classroom basically becomes this little bubble of immersion, where the language is the vehicle for learning, not just the subject being learned.
Okay, so that's all the theory, the why behind it all. But what does this actually look like in a real classroom? Let's go over some of the most common techniques.
Here are 4 absolute classics you're bound to see in a CLT classroom. We'll touch on each one, using authentic materials, playing language games, creating stories with picture strips, and, of course, doing some role play.
So we've already mentioned this as a principle, but it's also a technique. This means the whole lesson might be based around a real movie trailer, a popular blog post, or maybe even a weather forecast. It connects what you're doing in the classroom directly to the real culture and rhythm of the language.
Then you've got language games. I mean, who doesn't like games? They're awesome because they're motivating and they really lower the stress of speaking. A good game creates a real need to communicate in a fun way, so students get tons of practice without it feeling like a chore.
This one's a really cool collaborative technique. Students get a few panels from a comic strip, but some are missing. Their job is to work together, using the target language, to figure out what's going on and predict what's going to happen next. It's all about creative problem solving and communication.
And finally, role play. This lets students have a safe rehearsal for real-life situations. They could pretend to be a tourist asking for directions or a customer trying to complain in a shop. It gives them a chance to experiment with the language in all sorts of social contexts without any real-world pressure.
And all of this brings us to a really thought-provoking question that sits at the very heart of CLT. If getting your message across is what really, truly matters, is it better to be fluent but a little imperfect, or to be grammatically perfect but hesitant to speak? It's the central tension of learning any language, and definitely something worth thinking about.